Well, welcome everybody to another episode of Still Holding Hands. Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Yeah,
Always a pleasure to be with you.
Episode number 10. You've joined us for today's topic is in-laws and outlaws, love, limits, and healthy boundaries.
That's a good topic.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into it. But before we do, let's recap what we talked about on our last Still Holding Hands podcast. We looked at our vows. We called it Vows and Verbs, Living Daily the Vows You Spoke.
Yeah.
Yeah, on your wedding, on your wedding day. We said that when you spoke those vows, it was a perfect moment
Yes,
on your wedding day. But then real life hits you right between the eyes.
Yeah.
And they're very emotional on your wedding day. But we also talked about what if you change your mindset that this isn't just a one-time profession on your wedding day, but it's for the everyday. We looked at that and how living those daily actions with them, it's your words and your attitude on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's right. Not just empty words.
Not just empty words.
Like we had, it's from vows to verbs. So you're really living out and you're doing the things that you spoke.
Right.
And I love that, that we talked about that it's not that one-time thing. So
Mm-hmm.
you might not wear the dress again. You might not wear the tux again.
Right.
You might not have all of those people that are there watching you, but you have those words and those promises that you spoke to each other.
And I really liked how on the last episode that you broke down that marriage is not just a contract, but it's a covenant. Could you rehearse that again?
So a covenant, it's a solemn, binding relationship initiated by God or mutually entered into with God as a witness. Covenants, they create ongoing obligations, identity, and they often involve signs or rituals, like the exchanging of rings and those types of things. Covenants, unlike contracts, they are not made to be broken. They are for a lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think, when you go through life together, then you need to remember those things, right? That what I said, it's not a temporary thing, or if it works out for me or in my favor, but I meant what I said, and I meant through the end of my life.
Right. So we talked about in the challenge, the Still Holding Hands challenge from last week, the encouragement was to sit down together and to read your vows out loud to each other. Each person would ask and answer, what are we doing well? Each person would ask and answer, where do we need to grow? And of those things that we discussed during the podcast, to read and to choose one area to focus on. It's something that we encourage that to reaffirm their covenant commitment, to each other, not just on their marriage, but encourage them to do this regularly. And we use their anniversary date as kind of a target. But I really think it's something that you can really practice and work on all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You could have a daily check-in, you could have a weekly check-in, a monthly check-in.
Yeah.
But really just to keep that out front and center, because anything that you have as a priority, you have that in front of you all of the time.
Yeah. And we encourage you, to talk about these things. And for us, after that, we started talking about the area of in sickness and in health.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that was because of the time of year, kind of some personal things that we went through 10 years ago, this time of year when it came to sickness. And we talked about that on the podcast. It's that recommitment of our covenant with each other, that no matter where we are or what's going on, that we will be there to have and to hold till death do us part.
Right. And you might have those seasons, right? That was a season where that part of our vow we had to commit to and to walk through together. So praise God, we don't have the sickness and in health season all of the time. Some people do. Yeah. So just walking through each and every season, keeping those things fresh and as a priority.
Absolutely.
I wonder, did people like the song too? Hopefully people like the song. That was the Clint Black and Lisa Hartman song, When I Say
I Do. Yeah. It meant that I will for the rest of my life. Yeah. So vows and verbs, living daily. I like that part, living daily the vows that you spoke, because that's what it is. It's a daily action that we do.
For sure.
Right. All right. So let's move on to today's topic. What do we have going on today? I said it earlier,
Ooh.
but what do we have today?
In-laws and outlaws, love, limits, and healthy
There you
boundaries.
go.
So, one of my favorite sitcoms to watch is Everybody Loves Raymond. I know you've watched it with me, but how many of you have ever watched Everybody Loves Raymond? You know, you think about the dynamics with those households. You know, Ray and Deborah, they live next door to Frank and Marie, her in-laws, Raymond's parents, and Robert at some points is also living with his parents. And so they're there like all the time. There's just constant in and out,
Yeah.
you know. For sure, we see a lot of unsolicited advice, especially from Marie. You know, she's always kind of inserting her own opinion, not asked. They just walk right in the door. They walk right into the home. And often we saw Marie kind of give some backhanded comments to Deborah about her cooking or maybe her housekeeping, how she raises the children,
Yeah.
all of those things. And then we kind of see Raymond's MO. He really doesn't stand up and say, "Mom, you can't say that to my wife." You know, so he allows he allows that
Yeah.
dynamic. He allows those things to happen. And, you know, he doesn't set those healthy boundaries when it comes to their home and their marriage.
Right.
You know, I look back at the almost 40 years that we have been married, and I just want to give a shout out to Colleen and Jim DeMuth because they have never been like Marie and like
Well,
Frank.
who are Colleen and
Oh,
Jim
yeah,
DeMute?
sorry. Jim and Colleen. Colleen and Jim DeMuth are your
There you
parents.
go.
And I'm really grateful that your mother, your father, they've
Hmm.
never been that way. They've
Right.
never said something mean or hurtful, that they haven't said any sort of underhanded comments about my cooking, my housekeeping, how we raised our kids, anything like that.
Right.
So, Colleen and Jim, thank you that you are not like Raymond's parents.
But, for some people, what we see on Everybody Loves Raymond, that is the reality that they're dealing with, and it's not just a 30-minute sitcom with a happy ending at the end of the program,
Right.
right? They are experiencing real comments.
Yep.
They are having real actions that are coming at them. It's, the feelings. I mean, they're really hurt feelings, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's not necessarily the parents. It could be a family member, it could even be their own parents
Yeah.
and not just the in-laws,
Yeah.
right?
I
That
have
would
a
take
former
place.
aunt that, when she was married to my uncle, this was a long time ago. They've been divorced for over 40 years, and my uncle's no longer living. But, you know, she did a lot of really mean things to my grandma, my grandpa, my parents, other people that were in the family.
Right.
So she definitely stirred up the pot and caused family issues.
Oh, as we're talking to the listening, the watching audience, you have these married couples that are watching the podcast and listening to the podcast. There can be some real tension
Yep.
and experience real tension
Yep.
because of what takes place within that in-law or even their own family dynamic
Right.
that way. And it could be a real source of tension going into intense moments of fellowship.
Right.
We look at, and what we've seen with others that live in this reality and they have this struggle, I think because in all honesty, they want to honor their parents. They want to
Yeah.
honor, their family. And really there's that fear of the disappointment of their parents.
Right.
Kind of like that's what I see in this make believe family of the Barones. I see that at the end of the day, it's one, Raymond doesn't want to stand up to his mother, right?
Right, right.
But the other one is he doesn't want to he doesn't want his parents to be, he's still a child and he doesn't want.
In his own eyes.
Right, in his own
He's
eyes,
in his
right,
own eyes,
right,
right.
"Daddy, are you happy?"
Yeah, right,
"Mommy, are
yeah,
you happy?"
yeah,
Kinda deal, and so, in the reality, that happens in people's lives, and then, as a result, they don't set clear boundaries
right.
that they have, with their families.
Right. And I think there can be a lot of unrealistic expectation. Your relationship with your parents when you're 15, 16 years
Mhm,
old is a lot different than when you're 25, 35, 45. And as you get
mhm,
older, the expectations, they can't be the same
right,
because their family dynamic has changed and your family dynamic has changed.
yeah,
I know that, people can also encounter some guilt trips.
yeah,
Moms can be really good. Dads can be really good at giving guilt trips, where maybe it feels like you have to participate in something or fall in line to, the expectations that they have set.
right,
And that could be spoken or unspoken,
right,
right? Um, and the other thing is that I think we continue to talk about through all of these episodes is communication.
that's right.
Poor communication between a husband and wife. I know we talked about this on an earlier show, "Hey, let's go to my parents for lunch." And so you're thinking, "We have lunch at noon, we'll be home by 2 o'clock."
Yeah, absolutely.
And in my head, I might have a totally different
Yeah,
timeline. I might think lunch, and then we'll sit on the porch and we'll drink some lemonade and we'll talk. And then maybe we'll have some ice cream at 4 o'clock. And then,
"Oh,
we'll
it's getting
see.
close to dinner, so we're
Should we just stay?
stay."
Right. And it can happen that way and
Right,
it can be organic that way. But sometimes you might have a different idea for what's going to happen,
right,
later on in the afternoon.
right,
So I think really just to always make sure that as a husband and a wife that you're communicating,
right.
what is your expectation of this day and what it's going to look like? What is my expectation of what it is so that we can make sure that we're on the same page, which will hopefully help prevent
Yeah.
that tension.
And that's the thing is the how to avoid the tension that takes place, so we gotta name it, but then we have to learn how can we, if this is something that is like a regular happening that takes place and it's always a source of tension or an intense moment of fellowship, I think the communication piece is really important to come into
Yes.
play and talk through those things. Another tension that is possibly there is when the parents insert their ideas on how, as their children, even adult children, now married adult children, on how you're spending your money. Possibly how you are, and you talked about it before, but how you are raising your children, how
Right.
you are cleaning your house,
Right.
what types of jobs that you
Right.
have,
Right.
that are going to be providing for each other, I think that to be a sounding board for our adult children,
Uh-huh.
when it comes to these different aspects of their
If we're
married life,
asked.
if we're asked,
Right.
and once again, not unsolicited
Right.
information, but if we're asked, then we can give um, our advice, our ideas. A lot of times when we are asked from our children, it's more about, hey, well, this is what we did.
Right.
This is what we
What
did.
worked,
Yeah,
what
what
didn't
didn't
work.
work, yeah,
Don't do this, or,
yeah,
"Hey, this worked really well for us."
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So if you're a parent of adult children, because we know that there's not just young families that are listening to this,
That's
but
right.
if you are a mature parent like
Yeah,
we are, where you have adult children,
mhm,
I would just encourage you to practice that as well, that
yeah,
you don't give that unsolicited advice and you watch the comments that you make so that you're building each other up and
yeah.
not tearing somebody down.
So let me ask you real quick, have we always done it right?
No. We have not.
So, to Joshua, Caleb, and Luke,
We're sorry.
we're sorry. Our intent is not to give unsolicited advice,
Yeah,
but when asked,
yeah.
we'll give you, our opinions when
And,
asked.
I think, just a little side rabbit trail. I mean, I think as parents, our heart is that we don't want our children to make the same mistakes that we did and to experience the same heartache
Yeah,
and challenges and all of those things. So, now that's not to say every parent that that's their motive, but
right,
I feel like a lot of times that it is because we don't want our kids to hurt and we hate to see our kids hurt, whether they're 8 years old or 28, whatever the age is, we want our kids to have a better life than we ever did.
right. So we look at that when we got married, that we then established a new family,
We did.
right? And so and we watched in 1 year, in 4 months, our three sons get married the
That's
same
right.
year.
That's right.
That's right.
April, July, and August, all
Right.
of them got married
Right.
in the same year.
In the same year. And
Fun year.
so it was a great year.
Yeah.
And so we see that there were these other individual family units
Mhm.
that were coming together.
Yeah.
And there's a Bible verse from Genesis chapter 2 verse 24. I want to read this out of the Passion translation. It says, "For this reason a man leaves his father and mother to be unselfishly attached to his wife. They become one flesh as a new family."
Yeah, so your marriage, when you say "I do," when you rehearse those vows like we
Yeah,
talked about last time, your marriage, it creates a new primary family
that's
relationship.
right.
And marriage changes our priorities. We got married in July, and I remember that first holiday season, we stayed close to home. I think our jobs kept us where um we didn't travel to your parents for both holidays.
Mhm.
My parents lived about a half an hour, 45 minutes away.
Mhm.
We didn't spend the night at my parents' house. I remember just wanting to come home and to be in our home
Mhm.
and to be in our bed together because, it was new. We were this new Peterson family.
Right.
So it was super important. So, your marriage, you create that new primary relationship and you become that new family.
Think about how when we started having children
Mm,
and then the dynamic of holidays
yeah,
and how I believe at first there was an expectation
for sure.
that we would be with your parents, with your
Yeah,
family,
yeah,
and we would stay the night.
yeah,
And then I don't know if it was after Caleb was born or if it was still when Joshua, because we had a couple Christmases, let's see, 3 Christmases, um, with him as a baby or and then as a toddler before Caleb was born,
yeah,
right? And then when Luke came around, but I saw or see that we stepped up and said, "We want our children to wake up from their own beds on
yeah,
Christmas morning.
yeah,
So we will be over at
yeah.
X amount of
I
time."
remember having that conversation I think I had it with my mom. And, I was a little nervous because
Sure.
I didn't know how they would receive that. But, I remember my mom being supportive and she understood that that was something that was important to us because Christmas morning is a magical morning. When you wake up and you
Yeah.
have those gifts for your
Yeah.
kids, it's super important. And so I'm glad that we had that conversation and that we set those
Yeah.
boundaries.
Yeah. So we talk about that new primary relationship. You become
That new
that
family.
new family.
Yeah. So, here's the song alert for this episode. Married into This Town. It's a super cool song by the 2026 American Idol winner, Hannah Harper.
Yeah.
We'll make sure that we have a link to it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah. That was a really good, just, she wrote the song and it was, really about her,
Yeah.
experiencing this new family with her
Yeah.
husband,
Yeah.
in there as well. So, I think that we look at it that even as an adult that, we can still honor our parents, we can honor our family, but the relationship is gonna look different when you get married. And so, Chris,
And it
how
should.
yeah,
It
absolutely, it
needs
should.
to.
So how do we go about, or how can we encourage, those that are listening and watching the podcast to set healthy boundaries?
So, I put on the first of our list here is to don't ever cry, don't ever complain, to your parents or to your family about a disagreement. Don't air your dirty laundry
Yeah.
to your parents or your in-laws. I think we might have talked about this on a previous show, but, I grew up next to my mom's parents. My dad's parents lived on the same street.
Mhm.
And my mom talks about a story where she and my dad had a little scuttle and got into an argument, and my mom went next door to her parents' house and started to, complain about whatever the issue was that her and my dad had, and my grandpa was like, "Oop, you need to turn around and you need to take that back to your house." And
Yeah.
so I think it's really, really important that you don't go to your parents and talk about a disagreement. You don't wanna taint your spouse.
Right.
I know I've done things that were wrong, and I wouldn't want your parents to know about that. I know you've done things, shocker, that you've
Yeah.
done things too that
What?
were wrong, but I don't want my parents to know that
Right.
about you because, we all do dumb things, and
Right.
I would never want them to have that in the back of their mind about
Right,
you.
right. So don't ever put your spouse down or complain about them to your family. But on the positive side, what should you do?
You should build up.
Right.
You should compliment. Use your words of encouragement to build up, to lift up, to talk about the great things that your spouse does, to your parents and to your family. So your words, we've talked about this before, your words are important. They're full of life,
Yeah.
they're full of death. They're containers of each one of those things. So choose words of life and build up your spouse.
I think another thing that we did when it came to healthy boundaries is we began to create our own family traditions.
Yeah,
And that started before we had children, but we carried that over with
right.
our children. And
And
it
we brought two things, like, you had such a cool Christmas thing where you had a leave out gift, so it was not wrapped, it was in the place that the person was gonna sit, and we started that with our family, and we still do it today.
What's interesting is that one year we didn't do it, or we mentioned, we're not gonna do a leave out gift this year. And I remember them almost feeling disappointed that we weren't gonna do a leave out gift. And so that is a tradition that continues on to this
Right,
to this day.
right.
And so and now as we've added 3 other individuals
Yep,
to our Christmas morning, we have a leave out gift for everybody.
yep, yep,
And that's fun. And some years at Christmas time, not everybody's able to be home on that day. And so if that, we still do it for
yep.
whoever's
So
available.
build those traditions,
Build those
whether it's
traditions.
just you and your spouse or whether you have children. Build those traditions and those family memories that will last through a lifetime.
Right.
Another thing when it comes to healthy boundaries is don't feel pressure to conform or to take that guilt trip that maybe is, being presented to you. Um, if you're being asked or told to do something, you can say, "You know what? I'm sorry, that's not gonna work for us.
Yeah.
We have something else planned," or whatever it is. Or you could say, "You know what? Let me talk to Tim about that, and I'll get back with you and see if that will work out for us." So just don't feel pressure to take
Right.
the guilt trip.
Right. Right.
Let me read to you out of Romans 12:18, the ESV. It says, "If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably at all." So, as we talk about just really living together and experiencing life, going through life together, we all have a part to play, right? When it comes to living peaceably
Right.
with our in-laws, with our outlaws,
Right.
and with each other.
It's not artificial either. It's not a fake peace.
Right.
It's not, well, I'm just gonna put on and
This mask,
you
this
know
happy
And
face.
a lot of times you try to do that, but it's obvious that
Totally.
you're not happy at that point,
Right.
right? And so you might
Especially
say
for those of you like me that has a really bad poker face. So It's gonna
Yeah.
be right there
Yeah,
up
I'm
front.
glad that you don't play poker. So, it's not peace because you gave in to somebody,
Right,
right? Okay,
right. I'll conform.
right, I'll conform, I'll do it.
Uh-huh.
But, once again, with the relationship that you have with your spouse, communication. Have we said that before?
Yes, I think we have.
Communication, it's big. So,
And I think it's honest,
mhm,
but it's also very respectful
right, right,
conversations, right? Because if you come at somebody, whether it's your spouse or your family, "Ugh," and
right, right,
you're attacking, then immediately, whoop, walls are gonna come
right,
up. Our
right.
our sword, our defense, mechanism is gonna come out. So it's not that we have to be dishonest. It's not that we can't be upfront with how we're feeling or just kind of the dynamic of what's
Mhm,
taking
mhm.
place, but it's also being very respectful when you're having those
Yeah,
conversations.
so I think it's clarifying the expectations first of all with your spouse.
Right, start
Clar
there first.
Yeah, instead of going, "Oh, by the way, I told my parents that we were coming over for dinner."
Whoopsies.
And your spouse already has plans, or there were other things that were needing to be
Or
done,
maybe
or
they just don't feel like it.
they don't feel like it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So clarify your expectations with each other, and then have that conversation
exactly.
with your family. It is not dishonoring to say no to your parents and family.
You can actually do that as an adult. So I just want to remind you, you are not a kid anymore. You are not going to get grounded. And but you do need to respond to your
Absolutely.
parents in that place of honor. So don't be ugly about it,
Right.
but it is okay to say no.
Right. And as we mentioned, have that conversation before the opportunity for conflict to arise.
Right? That lunch example, we're gonna go over for lunch. What
Right.
does that look like?
Yeah.
What did you see as we go down this path so that you can make sure that your idea of lunch and my idea of lunch is the same once we go to have that lunch?
We've had that conversation before,
Yes,
and
we
it
have.
was because of what took place before, right? I mean,
Whoopsies.
it's just,
It's true.
hey, let me understand, how long are we going to be there,
Right.
right? What does this look like? So once again, are there other plans, or were there other things to do? That y- with that to not be caught off guard when
Exactly.
it comes to it. So have those conversations before conflict arises. Healthy marriages, they're not going to be built by avoiding the tension,
Right.
right?
No burying your head in the sand,
Right, right, right.
sweeping it under the rug. That's just gonna build, 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 build,
Mhm.
and then
Boom.
kablooey,
Right,
you're gonna have that big fight, that big
right,
argument,
right.
because one person might think everything is peachy rosy, and the other person might be getting super, super
Right.
frustrated.
Yes, spinning up. Yeah,
Yep. So, healthy marriages, once again, they're not built on avoiding
right,
things, but they're built on learning how to talk through challenges,
right,
how to work through challenges, and any of that tension together. I
right.
think that's the key thing, is that you're
Yeah.
doing it together.
And you mentioned earlier about the holiday conversation, and the first time you having that with your mother and your parents, and really they understood because they walked through it. They were very supportive. So
Right.
because they walked through it
Right.
as young parents as well. Realize that when it comes to having that conversation before conflict arises, is you and your spouse, if you have children, or you're in the process or going to have children, that you have that conversation on how you're going to raise your children
Yeah.
with each other. You have that conversation, so you're a unified front, you're a team, it's
Yes.
a team decision.
Team Peterson.
So then that way, there's nothing that's left to question when it comes to the conversation that you would have with your parents.
Right.
But realize they're the grandparents,
Yeah.
and they're probably gonna give in.
I was a little militant with, especially with Josh, because I remember my dad wanted to give him, like sweets and, all these, treats and candy. And we're like,
No.
no. And so, yes, you do need to have, you do need to have healthy
Boundaries.
boundaries,
Yeah,
but you
boundaries.
also
Yeah.
need to make sure that don't be militant. Make
Yeah.
sure that you let your grandparents be grandparents.
Yeah.
And then I would also just say, also be considerate and don't always say no.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about, kind of in these boundaries, the saying no
Right.
things.
Right.
And so we don't want you to think that everything should be a no. So also be very considerate. Your family loves you
Yeah.
and they want to be with you. If you have children, they want to be with their
They want to be a
grandchildren.
part of it.
So don't always say no.
Right. Yep. So here we are, in-laws and outlaws,
Ah,
with this conversation that we had today. But it's time to talk about our Still Holding Hands challenge for this
I
week.
love a good
Yeah, all
challenge.
right.
All right, so here is your still holding hands challenge. First off, have an honest conversation with your spouse about family relationships and dynamics. Remember, number one, you are a team.
That's
You
right.
are a new family unit. So have that team mentality.
Right.
We say a lot, we are
Team
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 Peterson.
Peterson. Yeah.
Next is to identify one healthy boundary that you feel that your marriage needs. And then ask each other, where do you feel unsupported?
Yeah.
The next question to ask each other is, how can I help to protect our marriage and our unity?
Yeah.
And then last, uh, probably should be first and last, is to pray together for wisdom and for peace for your marriage and for your family
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's a good challenge. I hope you take each week that you do these
Yeah,
challenges.
me too.
Even go back and look at some of the others maybe you haven't had a chance to listen to and just see the challenges. We always put the challenge in the show notes as well,
Mhm.
with all the information that you just gave. And I think that at some point we're going to put all these out somewhere,
Yeah,
so people can see
yeah.
them and they can keep doing it. So as we put a bow on today's episode, Genesis 2:24, for this reason, once again, a man leaves his father and his mother to be unselfishly attached to his wife.
Love it.
They become one flesh as a new family. So remember, your marriage creates a new primary relationship, a new primary family. You can still honor your parents,
That's right.
which you should,
Yes, you
and you can
should.
still love your family, and you can still protect your marriage as sacred through
Yes.
this whole
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, remember to have those honest and healthy conversations with your spouse. And just also, we just want to remind you that healthy marriages, they aren't built by avoiding tension, but they're built on healthy communication.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, on the next Still Holding Hands podcast, we are going to talk about dreams and disappointments. We all have dreams,
Mm-hmm.
and at some point in life, we are all going to experience disappointments as well.
Boy,
And
we've had
so
we've had a few, and we're
we
gonna
have.
we're gonna share them.
Yeah,
We're gonna
yeah,
talk about them, but not only to have these dreams and disappointments, but how we can come out victorious
yeah,
in
yeah.
the
That's good.
end.
That's going to be a good one.
Yeah, and we've seen the challenge side of it, but we've also seen as the dark clouds of the storm, but we've seen the sun come
Yes,
back
we
out,
have.
right?
Yes, we
We've
have.
seen that
Praise God.
that victorious.
Yeah.
So if you've enjoyed today's episode, here's how you can help us once again. You can like us, you can love us, and you can reach out to us. You can like us by subscribing where you listen and where you watch podcasts. There's that subscribe button right there. Just click it
Yep.
and subscribe to us. It really helps us out. You can love us by leaving a review, and then also not only leaving a review, but share it with somebody else.
That's right.
Yeah, share it, and but please do leave us a review. Let us know what you think. We're big boys and big girls that we can take it. We have
Yep.
received a few, and they're very positive, and we thank you for that.
Yeah.
But we've also had some from some close friends. We've had some. And it wasn't critical. It was just like, hey, this is something that I noticed, and it's helped us.
Yeah. Yeah. For
With
sure.
with that when we've gone on. And then if you have any questions about anything or you want to drop us a note, you can email us at timandchrispeterson@gmail.com. Now, I do want to say this, that if you have any questions that you would like to have answered, please email us at timandchrispeterson@gmail.com. We want to put together a whole list of questions that you have about your marriage or about marriage in general.
Yes.
And we want to do a whole episode in the future on Q&A.
Yep.
We want to read, questions
Read
from
your questions.
we won't identify you unless you want us to, but read your questions and then answer those.
Yes.
And so please send your questions to us via email.
Easy or hard ones.
Easy or
We are
hard
up
ones.
for the challenge.
Yeah, you said that last time too. You are
It's
up
true.
for the
We're up for the
challenge.
challenge, people.
Yeah,
All right. Well, we are so glad that you joined
absolutely.
us today.
Thank you.
And we just want you to remember that strong Christian marriages, they are not shaped by perfection, but by perseverance, by faith, and the commitment to keep holding hands.